Hello, and welcome to the Century College Writing Center presentation of Revision Step 1, Understanding and Meeting Assignment Requirements. The first step when revising a paper is to be sure that the paper actually does what your instructor wants it to. If the paper doesn't respond to the assignment appropriately, it doesn't matter how well written, researched, or thoughtful the paper is, since it's not really what the instructor is looking for. There are steps that you can take to make sure that you have understand and met the assignment requirements. These are 1. Understanding the assignment requirements, 2. Creating a checklist based on those requirements, 3. Checking your paper to make sure it meets those requirements, and 4. Making necessary revisions. The first step is understanding the assignment requirements. After you finish your first draft of the paper, review the assignment requirements. Understanding the different essay types and assignment questions can help you understand those requirements better. There are many types of essays, and understanding how each of these is meant to be written can help you understand the requirements better. First is an argumentative or persuasive style paper. These papers work to support an opinion you have on the topic. They usually have one main claim or thesis that should be debatable and specific. Compare and contrast papers look at how two things are similar, compare them, or different, contrast them. Sometimes you do both of these things, compare and contrast, or sometimes you just do one. You should still have a main purpose that explains why the compare and/or contrast is important or significant. Definition essays provide details about the topic that make it easier to understand, such as providing characteristics and traits of the topic. These papers may or may not have a main claim or thesis. Just check with your instructor or the assignment sheet. Narrative essays are written in a sort of story format. They should have a beginning, middle, and an end, and they typically include a lot of sensory details. Even though they're telling a story, they should still have a clear focus or purpose. Research papers provide information on the topic based on research. These tend to be very heavy on sources and your evaluation and analysis of them. Try to focus on one specific area of the topic. These papers sometimes are also argumentative, so be sure to check with your instructor to find out if this is expected for your assignment. Response papers are more informal and just sort of give your opinions or thoughts and make connections to the topic. These can be personal, but try to focus on one specific opinion you have and go into detail on that, rather than just talking generally about a lot of different topics in your response. Finally, a summary describes main ideas from another source, such as an article, film, or book, in your own words. Summaries typically do not include any quotes from the source. These are sometimes paired with responses. These are just a few of the essay types that we see commonly in the Writing Center. Then hopefully they'll help you better understand the assignment requirements. Also look to the assignment questions to see if your assignment's looking you to answer specific questions in your paper. Here's an example assignment with lots of questions. Talk about a time when you overcame a challenge with school. What was the challenge? How did you overcome it? Who helped you? In this example, the question listed above should all be addressed in your paper. You should talk about what your challenge was, how you overcame it, and who helped you. Next, after you've understood the assignment requirements, you should create a checklist. A simple checklist can be drawn up based on the assignment prop. Read carefully through the assignment to determine what you are expected to include in your paper. Here's an example prompt. Write an argumentative paper on whether or not you think community college should be free in the United States and why. Provide outside sources to support your argument. The paper should be in MLA format and at least 1,200 words. Since this paper is argumentative, you know that you need a debatable thesis. You should also explain why you believe college should be free or not, so be sure to give specific reasons. You also need to use outside sources, MLA format, and the paper should be 1,200 words or more. Here's an example checklist based on this assignment prompt. You'll want to make sure your paper has a thesis, that the thesis is debatable, that the thesis is specific. You'll want to use sources for each main point. Everything in your paper should support that thesis, and your paper should be 1,200 words or more and in MLA format. A simple checklist like this will give you some guidance in what you should be included in your paper. The third step is checking assignment requirements. Now that you've made sure you understand what the assignment is looking for, read through your paper carefully to see if you've met those requirements. Here are some suggestions about reading through your paper. When you're reading through your paper, focus on what you've written and not how you've written it. Think about your ideas, your thoughts, and your claims. And don't worry about spelling, grammar, or perfect formatting just yet. That comes much later in the revision process. You could also read your paper backwards. Start with the last paragraph and then work your way to the first one, reading one paragraph at a time. This helps you to focus on the ideas and the way that you're handling each paragraph. Don't read your paper right after you've finished the first draft. Give yourself some time, even just an hour or two. You can use the read aloud function on Microsoft Word to hear your paper out loud. Sometimes you'll hear something in that recording you might not have otherwise noticed. See if a peer or tutor or instructor could look over your work. We're happy to help you at the Writing Center at this step. Also review your checklist to make sure you've met all of those requirements. Now's time when you might need to make some necessary revisions. After reviewing your paper, compare what you've written on your checklist. And before you move on, make sure that you have all of the content, the ideas, and information put into your paper that's required for the assignment. At this point, you might need to make some big revisions to meet the requirements. This is a normal part of the writing process. The next few slides will provide some guidance on how to address common revision steps at this point, before you move on to revision step 2, having a clear thesis and identifiable purpose. Sometimes a common revision that you need to do is add more sources. Sometimes you might need to widen your search to related topics instead of topics that match your ideas exactly. For example, instead of searching for free community college, just search for free college. You could also visit the library to get help with your sources. Research is not easy and it takes some time and skill to do accurately. The librarians are experts in this area. If your topic is new and you can't find sources, try to search for related topics or topics that led up to your newer topic. If you can't find reliable sources that support your argument, you may need to find another viewpoint that can be supported. Sometimes not being able to find sources is a sign that your topic isn't quite right. Sometimes your paper can be too short. Instead of just filling in with fluff, try to explain your points in more detail. Make sure you explain source information in your own words. When using a source, explain what you think it means and connect it to your own ideas. Don't just put it into your paper without some context. You could also expand your conclusion to give your reader something to think about or an action they can take after reading your paper. You can also make sure that all body paragraphs have a strong concluding sentence at the end that ties your ideas back to your thesis. This is a step that sometimes students will forget. Other times your paper is too long. Having a paper that's too long isn't always a good thing. Sometimes long papers have too much fluff or rely too much on the sources. If your paper is too long, you can go through and remove anything that doesn't directly support the thesis. You could also remove extra sources if you have too many, or if you've used too much source material, cut down on that. Carefully read for repetition. Remove any sentences that are just repeating what you've already said. You can also look at individual sentences and see if you can simplify some of the longer ones. These are just some ideas of ways you can begin your revisions. Once you have made sure that you've met all the assignment requirements and feel that the main content of your paper meets those requirements, you can move on to revision step 2, having a clear thesis and identifiable purpose. Thank you.